Hi there, welcome to Lush Living. Today's topic is about bunions and top ways to actually correct them. I'm Katie Lush, the creator of Lush Living. I'm coming to you live from downtown Chicago at Chicago River North Pilates, the studio that I teach and own and work out of and learn all my fun tricks that I pass along to you. So, bunions. I've talked a lot about shoe wear in the past and why we want minimal footwear and why that you would choose minimal footwear, and part of that is bunions. So humor me. Before we dive in, I want you to grab a sheet of paper. If you're watching this on the replay, you can just come back and pause me, but grab a sheet of paper on like a hard surface and grab a pencil, and I want you to trace one of your feet. And it helps if you're standing on it. So I'm gonna stand. I'm gonna start with my left foot. Can you see it on the floor? And I'm gonna trace my foot. If you have any space, make sure you trace between the toes. I prefer a pencil just because then I feel like I don't get ink all over my foot. And then flip your sheet of paper over and then trace the other foot. Now I'm going to trace my right foot. And it doesn't have to be perfectly beautiful, but you want to make sure that you get a decent dimensions of your foot. Okay. All right, so I'm gonna label mine right and left just so I have an idea. Okay. So, if you have a bunion on your sheet of paper, let's see if I can show you mine. If you have a bunion, your big toe will be this way, right? It'll be leaned over, and this joint right here will kind of bulge and protrude. Right? That's essentially what a bunion is. It's your big toe just has leaned in towards all the other toes, kind of crowding your second toe. And then as a result, this bone sort of juts this way. So typically shoe wear that's very pointy, think of like a triangular Manolo Blahnik, will pinch all these toes. And once they get all pinched, these bones have to widen because of the pinch. So a lot of times our footwear is the direct cause of this bunion, right? Not fun to hear, but okay, so here's my foot. I actually do have a decent space, but you can see my toe is slightly lean. So I do have like a really mild, and this kind of protrudes a little bit. I do have like a little mild bunioning, and this is on my left foot. I think my right foot, actually it's a little bit more pronounced. That bump is a little bit bigger, and that toe is a little bit more leaned over. If you were to flip your foot over, you would actually probably see some callousing on your big toe, kind of on the edge, not towards the toes, but on the other side, the instep of your foot. You probably have some callousing on that side of your foot because you're loading that side of your foot the most. Every step you take, you're putting a lot of weight into that big toe joint. This is not gonna be cute, but that big toe joint, you're putting a lot of pressure and a lot of weight into it. And so it's causing, and you can see my callus right there, it's causing your toe to take a lot of grunt, and then it causes a lean. Yeah, that's kind of a good example. My right foot's pretty obvious. Okay, so how do we correct this? Well, the first thing you're gonna do is you're gonna take your favorite pair of shoes that you wear the most frequently, and you're gonna lay them on top of your diagram. Boom. And if your shoe wear runs in line with or slightly narrower than your entire forefoot, your shoe wear is too narrow. Change your footwear. But we want room for these toes and ball of the foot to fit in all of your shoes comfortably. Most shoes have a tapered forward forefoot, and so unfortunately this all gets real squished. Not lovely. Okay, so number one, change and address your footwear. If you wear a heeled shoe, boop, that would make me go this way. It would put even more pressure into my toes. And if I have a pinchy shoe, it's gonna put a heck of a lot of pressure into this joint. It's actually gonna drive all the weight into this joint. So try to wear shoes that are flat and level. Try to eliminate some of your heeled shoes if possible, especially if you're dealing with bunions. Okay, so we're gonna set this to the side and let's work on what we can do to actually stretch our feet out. So I'm gonna show you a couple of my favorite toe stretches. I'm gonna sit on a stool so I can show you a little bit more easily. If you can cross your leg over, that's sort of the ideal, but I don't expect everybody to be able to do that. You could just simply bend over and reach for your toes, but okay. Or something like this, where I'm gonna bring my foot up into my chest. So the first thing we're gonna do is, if these were my toes, I wanna do that with my feet. So I'm going to deliberately like straddle my toes apart. You know, you've got your webbing. I'm gonna try to stretch the webbing a little bit, and I'm gonna take a deep breath, and then I'm gonna go down to the next two toes. So starting with my big toes, I'm gonna pull my first two toes apart, and I'm gonna take a nice exhale, and then I'm gonna go to the next two toes. Exhale. Next two toes, exhale. I call these straddle toes. And then the last two toes, exhale. Okay, then we're gonna scissor them as if I'm taking, you know, 1 foot forward, one big toe forward, the other toes back, and then we're gonna scissor them back and forth, and then we're gonna go to the next two toes. Hopefully that makes sense. So I'm now gonna split. 1 toe forward, 1 toe back. I'm gonna exhale when I feel that little bit of a burn. And then I'm gonna switch the other scissor, and I'm gonna walk down to the next two toes. And switch. And switch again. Ooh, and some are a little bit more stingy, especially the toes that aren't as mobile. Okay, then I'm gonna pull each toe and traction it individually. In my household, we call this the piggies, because this little piggy went to the market, this little piggy stayed home, right? And you just go down and you give yourself a little wiggle and a little pull. And you're gonna do that 3 times through. It's kind of nice if somebody else does this on your behalf. It's not nearly as satisfying if you have to do it yourself. Okay, and then the last element is you're gonna draw a figure 8. This is a little bit more complex with your toe. So I'm gonna hold my other toes relatively still, and I'm gonna draw, it's a horizontal figure 8 in relationship to your toes. So my big toe is going to draw a figure 8 this direction, not up and down. It's not this way, it's left to right. Can you see that? Right, so the figure 8 goes this way, not up and down. It's more complicated, I know. But if you have any questions, let me know. But I'm gonna start with my big toe, and I'm gonna go left to right. 1, 2, 3, and then I'm gonna reverse it. 1, which is hard to figure out. 2, this just takes some practice. And then you go down to the second toe. 1, we do it in 3s. 2, 3, and then we reverse it. 1, 2, 3, and then we go to the next toe. 1, 2, 3, reverse it. I always forget. 1, 2, 3, next toe. 1, 2, 3, reverse it. 1, 2, 3, and then I'm on my pinky toe. 1, 2, 3, and then I reverse it. 1, 2, 3. I'm gonna give that foot a break. We have toe spacers. They sell all these yoga toes on the internet. They're kind of, you can find them at Walgreens as well. I like these ones. Get you a little closer. It's flat on the bottom. It's got a big toe hole. It's a little bit bigger, and then it kind of gets smaller towards the bottom. And it's a little bit ridged on top, but I'm gonna slip these between my toes. They're usually kind of gummy, so it's sort of nice if you put them on when they're a little bit damp. People, clients love to wear them in the bathtub. Yeah, because they're a little gummy, so they're a little easier to put on. Okay, so I'm gonna let that foot just relax in the toe separators. And we're gonna repeat the whole sequence to the left foot, so, or your other foot. So I'm gonna start with the straddle toes, where I pull the toes apart, wait for the burn, and then I go down to my next two toes. Next two toes, next two toes. And then I'm gonna scissor front to back and switch. And switch. Ooh, feeling a little burn. I end up feeling the burn up my foot. And then we do the piggies. We pull. This little piggy went to market. This little piggy stayed home. And we go each toe gets a little traction, and then we repeat 3 times. And then we do our figure 8s. I try to switch hands for this just to help my brain, but figure 8 side to side. Oh, this is harder. 1, 1, there we go. 2, 3, and then we reverse it. 1, this is harder. 2, 3, that is really complicated on my other foot. 1, 2, 3, and then reverse. 1, 2, 3. And again, 1, 2, 3, and then I reverse. 1, geez, this is hard. 2, 2, 3. It's a good brain challenge, right? And again, 1, 2, 3, and then the reverse. 1, 2, 3, and then again, 1, 2, 3, and then the reverse. 1, 2, 3. And then I'm gonna take my toe separators. I'm gonna slip them between my toes. And I'm just gonna hold here and breathe. So when I sleep at night, I have these things called my happy feet. They're socks, and then at the end of the socks, they have like a piece of terry cloth that kind of rounds in between the toes, and they act as toe separators. You can actually probably go through my earlier feed and find a picture of them, because I've taken a picture of it semi-recently. They're white and they're not super cute, but I'm doing it at night because that's like a solid 8 hours of where I'm not in shoes, and I'm giving my toes that extra opportunity to spread and stretch out. And I do have, like, you know, a mild bunion. It's not even all that extreme, but it's enough that I feel like I need some correction. I wore a lot of point shoes and a lot of narrow shoes throughout my lifetime. It was a very big trend in the 90s. So just one thing that I can do to kind of help combat that. Okay, so I'm letting my feet hang out in the toe separators. If you can tolerate them, it's nice to keep them on for long periods of time. Baths, bedtime, office work. It just gives your toes an extra oomph of stretch. Okay. So if you have a tennis ball, great. I have my little favorite yoga tune-up rolling balls, and I'm gonna roll my foot out. So I'm actually gonna keep my toe separators on. I'm gonna move you back a little bit so that you can see the ground. Okay, don't fall over. Let's make you straight. Okay, so I'm gonna take my ball and I'm gonna start, I already started with my right foot, so I'll start here. So you place the ball under the ball of your foot. Mine is kind of squishy, so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna lunge and I'm gonna push some body weight down into my foot as if I'm trying to squish the ball. So from a side vantage point, I kind of look like this. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna roll the ball forward just as I get to the hard part of my heel. My toes are draped forward, just hanging forward, and then I'm gonna roll back. And I'm gonna repeat that again. Rolling forward, rolling back. And I'm trying to displace the bones of my feet. I can look down and I can see sort of that spreading action in the bones on the top of my foot. I'm back. And then you're gonna roll the ball a little bit more to the pinky side of your foot. You're still lunged forward, you're still trying to squish the ball, and then you're gonna roll the ball along the pinky side of your foot, back and forth. And what you're kind of looking for is what I call speed bumps, where, oh gosh, that's a hard one, where as you roll, if you feel sort of like a jump, that's a speed bump, and that's probably an area of your foot that's a little bit tight, and you wanna work out the speed bumps. I'm gonna do about 3 passes just for time's sake, but do as many as you want. And then go more towards the big toe side of the foot. So this is more like the true arch, like the tender spot of the foot. And then same thing, you're gonna roll. I'm trying to squish the ball and let my foot drape over the ball simultaneously. And roll the sole of my foot out. And then rest and just stand and just feel the differences between the 2 feet, because the side that you just rolled out on energetically has got some blood flow, some lymph, and it should feel nice and wide like a little platypus foot. So same thing on the other side. Let's start in the smack dab center of your foot, kind of on the right smack dab middle of the ball of the foot. You're lunging, again, your weight forward to kind of smush the ball, and then you press and roll the ball like you're trying to smush it. Just before you get to the hard part of your heel, try to stay kind of in the soft tissue and back. The more body weight you can kind of sink down, the more you'll feel your toes. Again, the bones kind of displace. Then you're gonna go a little bit more on the pinky side of your foot. Same thing, kind of smush the ball. Let the toes really drape over. It's a good indicator if the toes flip up. That gives you some information of what's going on in your feet. We want the toes to just hang down, like like a big bear paw, just hanging forward. And then you're gonna roll the ball a little bit more to the big toe side of the foot, and then same thing, roll, trying to smush the ball. Displacing the bones of the feet, massaging the tissues, looking for those speed bumps, and once you hit one, you kind of take your time to roll it out and kind of slow your way over the bumps. This foot is not nearly as bumpy. And then you can let the ball go and just stand here for a second. Again, your feet should feel nice and wide, kind of spread out. Okay, so you don't necessarily need the toe separators to do this. You could do it with your feet, without the toe separation. It's just an added bonus, because the toe separation is gonna widen your feet out a little bit, and it's gonna allow the ball to kind of get into those little tight spots between the bones of your feet. So next we have calf stretching on our favorite half dome, half roller. So it's a typical calf stretch. So I'm gonna show it down on the floor again, where I'm gonna step my left ball of the foot, and actually I'm gonna remove my toe separators for this one. My ball of my foot, get this out of the way, is up on the half dome. My heel is on the ground. And I'm gonna take a small walking step forward so my feet line up with one another. And you can see I'm doing a calf stretch because the back toes are angled up as if they're going uphill, and this foot is just flat and level. And I'm just gonna hang out here and breathe. I'm gonna back the weight up in my heel. The sensation might not be very intense. For me, it ends up being a bit of a balance challenge, but just know that the tissues have the opportunity to kind of open and stretch and get some really good ankle mobility, because that's actually quite important for your bunions. So you breathe, 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 and then we're gonna do what's called a soleus stretch, where you're gonna bend your knees like a little micro bend, kind of increasing that calf and Achilles stretch, and then extend. And then same thing, just like a little Achilles, extra oomph. So from a front vantage point, I'm really paying attention that when I go to bend my knees are pointing straight ahead. I'm not lightly knocking my knees together. They point straight through that second and third toe and extend when you do the soleus stretch. That's important because you want to keep a little outer hip work in play. Okay, so then let's try the other foot. I'm going to remove my toe separators. Oh, it feels really good already. So then I'm going to step up with my right foot. Again, the ball of the foot is up top, the heel is on the floor. So again, it's like that foot's going up a hill. And I'm going to line my feet up with one another and just balance here for a second, see if I can get my bearings. And if this feels okay, I'm going to take a small walking stride. Ooh, this calf is significantly tighter. And breathe. So I have a lot of these half foam rollers. We are offering the Move Your DNA workshop here this weekend, so feel free to join us. I'd love to see you. But one of the props that we need is this half foam roller. So I bought a whole bunch of them to sell. So if we have any leftovers and you would like one, I'm gonna sell them for $10. So just know that. They're a great, light, easy piece to have. And then we'll do a little soleus stretch of just a little bend and a little extend. Again, making sure that my knee is tracking straight forward, not buckling toward my midline. And again, a little bend, and a little extend, and a little bend. And it's not a surprise to me that this is my more buniony foot, and this actually is my tighter calf. So now we're gonna stretch the top of the foot. I like to teach this one sitting just because it can be so extreme, but you're gonna flip your foot under, and you're gonna think of pushing the top of the foot down and forward. So it's like a ballerina in a really deep point. So I'm stretching the front of the shin and the calf, So just like we want your ankle to be able to bend up, we also want your ankle to be able to bend down. Then you just breathe. If you get a lot of cramping, which a lot of people do because this is pretty extreme, so hard that it floats the other foot off the ground. So that this hip is slightly lower, this hip is slightly higher, the weight's backed up in the heels, the toes are light and liftable, and I'm feeling my right outer tush really kick on, and then square off the feet. And then you try the same thing to the other side. So you do a little weight transfer. You drive that base leg down, 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 down so hard that it floats the opposite foot up. The weight's backed up in the heel, the toes are light. So again, this right outer hip for me is really fired up. This hip is slightly deliberately higher than this one, not because I'm shoring up in my waist, but because this glute is contracting and it's tipping my pelvis a little bit, yeah? And square that off. So same thing, you do a little hip list, you drive the heel down, 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 down to float the opposite foot off so it has clearance to swing and it's not touching the ground. And this is a balance challenge, yeah? And then squaring that off. And then same thing, a little weight transfer, driving the heel down, 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 down to float the other foot. And again, you've got that clearance, which is what we love, yeah? So to turn that up a notch is what we call like a monster walk. So what you can do is if you have a TheraBand at home, see if I can find it, or these loops are really, really convenient to have. You're gonna step inside of your loop and put it just above your knees. It's called monster walk. I actually prefer the term penguin or tin man, but you're gonna do that same hip listing and have a little pushing out action. And you're gonna take a couple walking steps. So the knees stay straight, you're really working at the hips and trying to keep tension out on the band. So each foot exchange is a hip list, right? And you just do tiny, tiny little walking steps, side to side. You really feel the outer glutes kind of kicking on, this weight still back on your heels, the toes are light. You keep a little tension on your band, you don't let it go completely slack. So you're constantly pushing out. My feet are parallel, yeah, and my knees are straight. It's my hips that are doing all the work, not my knees. Okay, so one more pass. And then you're gonna let this go. Woo, and just shake that out, see what that feels like. And let's take your diagram and let's retrace your toes or your foot. So line up your foot, line up the heel part of your foot. And then let's trace. Let's see if your foot is not wider. I'm gonna flip it over to the left side, which mine definitely is. You kind of have to line up the big toe joint and the heel for it to be appropriate. Oh yeah, totally at my left foot spread out quite a bit. So kind of like I said earlier, yeah, for sure. I don't even know if you can see this, but you can see how it kind of opens out here a little bit more. Kind of interesting. I think this was number 1 and that's number 2. See how I did on the other side. Yeah, this one's easier to see. Okay. So the big toe joint, that's pretty darn spot on, but like, look, that's my right foot. Look at how much wider my forefoot. So my foot started out really, really tight. And when I did all that series of exercises, you can see how my foot spread out quite a bit. Yeah, so having a more spread out foot is gonna innately dissipate the forces across the ball of the foot, and then it's not gonna put that big toe joint at risk for tipping inward. Woo, isn't that cool? I totally should have labeled that 1 versus 2. But look, I wasn't cheating because look, this line is pretty much the same. I just sort of, and even my big toe and everything stretched out upward, and then it definitely went wider. That is so cool. I love that. So that is how you work on your bunions. So even after doing that little segment, it was like, you know, a couple minutes, my feet feel really wide and broad. I feel like my hips are a little bit fired up, so when you go to walk around, you feel like your feet are nice and flat and spread out. Yeah, so that is how you work on your bunions. So try those exercises. They're really simple. A lot of the toe stretching is really simple. You just have to be able to reach your toes. Let me know if you learned something. You can definitely leave a note in the comments. But bunions are not a pathology. Just because your mom had them does not mean that you will have them. You just have an affinity for the same footwear and the same walking style and habits. So I'm Katie Lush signing off. Feel free to, again, write in the comments. You can find me here, and you can also find me on Instagram at the Katie Lush, KATYLUSH. You can also find me on my website at katielush.com, and let me know if you have any other questions about bunions. All right, take care. I'll see you next week. All right. Oh, hi, Lauren. Bye.